thanks for having me, gentlemen. Pleasure to be here.
For sure. You brought some studs down.
He's an okay one, I think. He's an okay.
Yeah.
Coming from a big buck killer, it's kind of
Big buck kid.
he's like, well, he's just okay.
I'm all right.
Right place, right time. That's all it is.
So I guess kind of start out, telling all of our listeners who you are, where you come from, and what kind of got you into the hunting scene.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Joshua Yates. I'm from originally down around northern Arkansas border, Cassville area, Aurora, and I really didn't get into hunting until I was probably in junior high and whatnot. Grew up on a nice sized farm, big family farm, and all them hunted, but everybody's busy, running cows and all that stuff. So finally my uncle, he got me into bow hunting, and man, I was in the tree stand the first time he let one fly and hammered one, and I mean,
It was over.
Yeah, I didn't want anything to do with a gun. I mean, I do rifle hunt some, but it's just no comparison.
Say you killed the stud last year. with
Yeah.
a rifle,
Yes,
Which
I
we'll
did.
get into that.
Yeah, he was definitely a good public hunting buck. But so I started bow hunting when I was about 13, and I had an old high country archery, just an old split limb bow. Didn't know what I was doing, but I could hit a matchbook at 10 yards, and I thought I was Robin Hood. But as we all know, as bow hunters, that's not the case. You don't just go up there and just hit one because you can hit a matchbook. But the morning I killed my first deer ever was with a bow, and it was a little doe, and I'll never forget that. I mean, the hunt was just magical, the feeling was magical, and at the time, buddy of mine, he was driving an old, like an 87 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais, just baby blue, everything you didn't want to be seen in, And I'll never forget, he said, man, you want to put that in the trunk? And I said, absolutely not. And man, we put that dude on the hood. I was just proud as punch. But
like, you got showing up.
Exactly.
Cards.
Exactly. And, from there, I was just hooked. I mean, as you know, just the thrill. And then as you get older and you mature as a bow hunter, you really get into that sense of taking pride, and not only just out there in nature and doing all that, but it takes some work. When you're hunting big, mature whitetails, or any mature whitetail, it can be a mature doe. I mean, how many times do does bust us before the bucks?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
So the first time I actually stuck a decent one, it was a whole nother ballgame. It was like a whole new waterfall of emotions, and I just haven't looked back, and if I can be in the woods up there,
For sure.
Stick and string all the way.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Well, that's kind of how I was when I first started bow hunting. Refer back to episode 1. Like, I rifle hunted with my dad ever since I was really 5, 6 years old, and then my cousin got me it wasn't brand new. I don't know why I said that. But a Barrel Whitetail 2 compound bow, and it's probably taller than that one sitting right over there. 10% let off, all that good stuff, and yeah, I shot my first deer with it. And after that, I didn't, like you said, I didn't want to pick up a rifle again.
Yeah,
I still did. I killed my biggest one today, a 148 with my rifle walking
That's
through the
good.
stand. But just didn't get quite the thrill of a bow kill.
Absolutely. Yeah, that rifle hunting's nice, but that bow hunting, man, it just grabs your soul and just like, come here, love me.
Adrenaline's so much more after one of those.
Absolutely, yeah. The shakes. I mean, even to this day, I still get the jitters of just does. That just like, oh my gosh, is she gonna bust me? Am I doing everything right? And then you just hear that.
Obviously gonna get so much closer.
Exactly, and then you hear that foot stomp or that, and you're just like, honey, don't test me today. You know where I'm coming from.
One more time and you're done.
Yeah, like I'm not against it.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a pretty good background. So obviously you shed hunt a lot.
Yes, a lot. That's honestly where I do the most homework. In all honesty, I do honestly probably 80% of my homework, especially on any in particular buck like this one here. The homework's done in shed season for me.
Right.
From February 15th to essentially April 1st. I'm in, as you can tell, and you see pictures and everything, I'm in the woods as much as I can for you, because I feel like that's when bucks really let you in on, like, hey, this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and it also kind of tells a story of why is this deer, why am I finding his sheds right here? What makes this buck want to be right here? And to me, that off-season scouting probably accounts for 80% of
Payoffs.
exactly. I mean, you're always gonna get lucky come rut time. Somebody else's big buck's gonna wander your way, yours is gonna wander off. They get what I would call dumb, but off-season homework beats that every single time.
For sure.
I mean, and you may not take that buck that year, but I feel like it gets me close enough to where I can study him and learn him more, because like this buck, it was a 2-year quest. I mean, I've got several other bucks that are 3 and 4 and 5-year-old. You know, I've got an 8.5-year-old buck that I killed and hunted him for 6 straight years. Had him on camera, on public land. So not only was he fooling me, but he was fooling hundreds of other
Everybody else.
everybody, you know. And every year I find these sheds, and man, I've got him figured out. No, you know. And in the end, a snort wheeze is what cost him his life, you know. So did I really outsmart him, or was I just in the right place at the right time, you know?
And when you think about it, and when you think about it that way, those deer lived for so long, and something that small
Yes.
got them killed.
Yep.
When you think about it, it's just crazy, isn't it?
Yep. Something as small as a wind, or a snort wheeze, or you know, it's like the old saying that curiosity kills a cat. I think curiosity kills a lot of big bucks.
Because
Because
a big deer.
exactly right.
For sure. They just question what that one new thing is in their environment.
Yeah. Well, it's like the hunt for Willis this year. Whenever I was trying to kill him, that was my first ever actual time hearing a buck snort wheeze in person. And talk about send some cold chills on your back. And he was 100 yards away. But I mean, it was plain as day. Like it's crazy.
And it's on. When
Yeah.
when they're being that vocal to you, you don't know how it's going to end. But one thing's for sure, that buck's coming to you.
Yeah.
Because he's had enough of your shenanigans, and he's ready to fight. And the thing about a snort wheeze is, a lot of guys, I think they just use that strictly off of aggression. But I think once a buck's 4.5, 5.5, for his core area, I think he pretty much knows almost every buck that's his size or younger. So he knows their voice, just like I know yours, you know, and yours. And I think a lot of times, because no two guys are going to blow through or going to do the same. I think that's what gets them killed a lot, is they're like, whoa, that's something
different.
new.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then as long as we make the shot count, it works out for our favor, you know. Violence is not the answer. but they seem to think it is. So.
Yeah.
But vocalization is just absolutely key, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So, with the sheds, how many have you found this year?
I found just a little over 50 this year. I found 9 deadheads, but as far as good sheds, I found it was 51 or 52, and about 40 to 45 of those came off the public. So
Wow.
I'm big time in the public. I think if you can, in my opinion, I think public deer and private land deer are 2 completely different animals, especially once you get to that mature 4.5, 5.5, 6.5. But I also think that if you can figure public pressured deer out, it makes those private deer a little bit easier to key in on, because they're not so on alert. You know, you can get away with snapping a twig, or you can get away with maybe being winded once. You know, there's well, that's new. But public deer, you know, it's no. More times than not, I've seen them bed up in the wrong wind just to get a better visual, or vice versa. You know, they kind of sacrifice the visual, and obviously they live and die by their nose. But I mean, it's just 2 completely different animals, and I try to spend at least 90 days almost every year in the woods.
Yeah.
I mean, in a stand. That's you know, and I'm not just hunting. I'm learning. You know, I mean, there's so many big bucks that I never could figure out, or I never could get on, or you know, and then you hear of them getting killed, and it's like, man, I've been hunting that deer for like 4 years. You know,
What happened?
Yeah, and then somebody says,
it really makes you wonder what the story behind that person's hunt was.
it really does. Like, was he just within earshot and snort wheezed, or was he on a doe, or was he not even where I've been looking? I've just been catching him cruising to bed, or you know, and his core area was a mile away.
Yeah.
Yeah, was
You
that
just-
person putting in as much time as
Exactly.
or more?
Which makes it better if he was.
Yeah, not somebody that just walked in that day.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
That's how it goes sometimes too.
Yes.
A buck you've been chasing forever. Somebody that's never even been there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with public land, somebody that's never even been there can slip it right in and kill that deer.
Yep.
And that's the thing with public land. Everybody's allowed to it. It's
Yep,
100%
absolutely.
free chase. You know, free chase, and
Yeah.
anything can happen.
Yeah, and the first few years I hunted public, it wasn't real high pressure, you know, it wasn't bad. And then I got to where I was hunting some more public land up in central Missouri and whatnot, and the pressure is just completely different. And it finally dawned on me, man, hunting high pressure deer, you may not always take that big buck that you're after, or a deer period, but it will make you a better bow hunter, or deer hunter in general, because you have nothing to lose in that aspect. You really don't, because not only are you out there educating those deer, but you've got turkey hunters, mushroom hunters, other deer hunters, I mean, just bird watchers. Those deer are constantly seeing human involvement. So whenever you are able to take a deer like that, it should do nothing but boost your confidence up.
Yeah.
Because you're like, man, I did so many things right to lead to this doe, or I did X, Y, and Z right to kill this 130-inch deer. You know, I mean, they're all trophies on public. I mean, hands down.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, absolutely. You know, I was very blessed to kill an absolute tank this year on public with a rifle, and it meant more to me than killing this deer back here behind me with a bow.
Yeah.
Just strictly off of private versus public and how hard I had to hunt for that deer. Now, granted, that other deer's got about 30 inches on this deer and tons of character, but it just comes down to the fact of, that's a whole nother story, you know, but that's a 6.5-year-old buck that has fooled me for essentially 4 years, and how many other guys, you know? How many times
It makes you wonder.
It really does. Like, how many times did he get shot and hit? It's just awesome. Public land hunting is just awesome, in my opinion.
So we had a deer up in Illinois when I was up there guiding up at Hadley Creek, and we had a guy in late season shoot probably about 140-inch 10, and when we found him, walked up on him, and right off the bat noticed his back leg was split in half. And when I was on the phone with him before he shot this deer, he was like, the food plot was kind of in this bowl down the bottom, and it was a food plot, corn food plot. And so right in front of him, about 70 yards, was the timber line, and then it goes straight uphill, where he watched this buck for 2 hours slowly step down that hill to get to this food plot. And the whole time he was texting me, he was like, something's not right with this buck. Something's just not right. And when he got down there, he noticed his back leg was about that big around, and he went ahead and shot him. He ran into the corn and died. And like I said, when I got up there upon inspection, I saw that the back leg was broken, and hard telling, but I noticed, because normally, so when a deer gets hit by a car, I think it's normally the opposite side antler has growth defects. It's normally always the opposite side, I believe is what it is. So yeah, this deer was hit on the right side, but his left side was stunted. So that led me to believe, okay, well, you know, he could have been hit in the middle of the summertime.
Absolutely.
And not only that, he had a hole through no man's land, just an old warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably a 5-6-year-old deer. And back to what you were saying, you know, it's crazy the kind of stuff they go through.
Yeah.
And the fate is you if you get that chance.
Absolutely. You know, I hear a lot of guys say that, man, it's just so much luck, and it is. There's a huge part of it that's luck, but you've still got to do your homework when you're hunting one deer in particular, whether it be this deer or a deer you've killed or something you've killed, Andy. You've got to do a lot of homework for luck to play on your side too, because I can promise you that buck's got way more luck than us hunters will ever have. He's been shot at 100 times. He's probably been barely missed by callers, you know, I mean, being nocturnal, and it's insane that the luck that they have. It's just that, like a shark in its sixth sense. Big bucks, they just have something about them, but they're tough. I mean, you see them shot up, and you see them gored, you see, you know, and it's just mind-blowing. It really is.
Yep. It also really makes you wonder, like, after we're going to go ahead and go into shooting deer and how long they live after that. Really makes you wonder how much and how long that adrenaline kicks in.
Absolutely.
From how long I've seen deer live. It makes you wonder, wow, is their adrenaline still like flowing a little bit? Like, how is he still alive?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You got big bucks on your mind.
Yeah.
Well, oh yeah, like that was like this year. We found an 8 that was pretty decent on public, and I was trying to get it as my first bow buck, and he just outsmarted us enough that he went MIA on us, and we couldn't find him again.
Tell them the story after hanging stands that day.
Oh yeah, we hung 3 different stands to do a doe hunt weekend, and we weren't even gonna hunt that afternoon. We were probably in that one spot at like noon. And we got done, we shot our bows, it's probably 3 or 4 o'clock. Andy just left, and I looked down there in the binos, and there's deer coming out of the field. That 8 walks 10 yards from that stand.
Of course he
We
does.
just set up.
Of course he does.
And I'm like, why am I not setting down there?
Yeah, that's what he asked me in the phone call too. I was like, I don't know why we're on that.
We didn't have anything else we could do, so I was like, no, he just outsmarted us.
Yep, he was there and we weren't, and that's how it goes so many times.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I've had sets where I've hung before and be walking out and same thing, go up and pull out the glass and watch, whether it's a young buck, old buck, young doe, and literally watch them walk around and sniff where you've walked. That just goes to show that their nose is their compass.
Yep.
I mean, they'll, just sniffing like, okay, so then if they see you, well, of course they associate danger with that smell, and I honestly think sometimes that that's what them bucks are doing. They've seen you from some type of vantage point and watched you, and so now you're not there, and they're like, oh, well, I'll just go down there and just investigate, and just kind of sniff around. It seems a little far-fetched, but they don't get smart by accident. I know that.
No, a lot of education comes with that.
I know he saw us the week before during rifle season. I saw him early morning twice, so I'm sure he was leery of what was out there.
Absolutely. And
And
yet,
there ain't a doubt in my mind, he knew someone was on his tail.
oh yeah.
Yeah, because he moved north pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're just so smart and just so, they're almost temperamental, and guys say like, oh, that deer can't figure that out. Well, what have we been shown by trail camera pictures over the years? I mean, day after day after day, a deer is in the same spot at the same time.
Yep.
He knows that at that moment, there's a 99.9% chance he should be safe.
Yep.
When the wind changes, he's not there. Wonder why? Because he knows he can't get to that point without danger or something like that.
Yeah.
And them deer prove it every single year. There's deer that I'm still chasing from 3 years ago that I see them all summer with bachelor groups. They just speared hunting season, and guess what? Bucks group back up, there he is again. I'm like, where in the heck have you been? And it just, them big bucks are just different.
Yeah, that's what makes them so.
Yes, rewarding and
Yes.
they really are wizards in their own. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just, some of the stuff that they can do is just, it's just insane. I mean, coming in hook, line, and sinker, and then all of a sudden, no, I see Andy and Joshua over there. No, there's your buddy over there. I'm gonna go back the other way. Like,
Yeah.
at what point did that deer either see or smell me or hear me? I didn't move. So to think that they don't have that brain capacity is just, it would be silly to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times
You
you
know
watch
they
a
got
doe
something
sit there
up there.
she's trying to peg you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, please don't see me.
You know what's funny? Whenever they I'm sure you've had it happen with you. You may have as well. But like when a doe she sees you, she knows what you are, she knows what you're doing there, and she'll do like what you was just doing, and then she'll put her nose to the ground and act like she eats.
And she's
But her
looking-
nose isn't even making
Yeah.
contact with the ground, but she's looking right up
Yeah.
at you, trying to get you to move.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. That's
Yeah. You're exactly
it's
right.
up there. They
Yeah.
know. They know.
Absolutely. They've my uncle was always super good about telling me, you might look at the same tree 1,000,000 times during every hunt, but eventually you're going to scan that key core area so many times that if you're just looking like this and there happens to be a squirrel's ear or something in the V of a tree, you pick it up that quick.
Yeah.
And he's exactly right, because that's what them deer do. They look from this way and then they put their eyes down. And she's still looking up, she's just trying to get a different angle.
Then again, here brings in another factor. You hunt 3 hours, 4 hours, all day sits in the rut. Then what do? You go home.
Yeah.
Then what do you do the next day? Maybe go to work. Then what do you do after that? Go do something else. You're only in the woods for a short sliver of time, while those deer that's all they know.
Yep.
They're just there. So yeah, I could see why that would.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've learned is, I had an old man tell me one time in the feed store, it's no matter where you're walking, whether you're on a ridge, a bottom, going up a creek, whatever, just assume that every move is being seen. And I have found that so true, because how many times do you be in a stand and you'll see deer come from your way, or you'll see one get up and you're like, oh, I never even seen her.
Yeah,
You know, and it makes sense, like, how can I get in here differently to where I can't be seen? But the way they play the wind, you just can't. You just gotta straight line it. I'm a firm believer in not going to your stand, zigzagging, playing Where's Waldo. If you do spook a deer, just go. Just go see it. You know,
Yeah.
I see guys say, well, I blew deer going in.
That don't mean anything.
I mean, how many times do you blow deer and you don't even know it?
Yeah.
Because they were 100 yards away, or they were 200 yards away. Once things calm down, they'll usually come back. Now, granted, once they hit that scent trail, whether you're playing your scent or not, they're going to get a little leery. But
Yeah.
you're always going to bust deer, whether
Mhm.
whether it's with your headlamp, whether it's with scent. That's their world,
Yeah.
especially on public. Human scent is probably the strongest scent that they know,
Yeah.
because it's so fluent in there. You know, on private, it is a little bit easier to get away with stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it firsthand thousands of times, you know. You walk by Doe and she just watches you. She thinks she's being smart, but in reality, you've never posed a danger to her.
Yeah.
You don't get away with that in public. I mean, they're headed
No,
across
no.
the mile of fields or the corner, or,
Yeah.
you know, your buddy saying, hey, man, I just seen your buck you've been hunting, and I'm 2 towns away. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, great.
Well, and going back to basically, so whenever you're walking in or you're just sitting in your tree stand and deer blows or something like that. And then a lot of people think, oh, well, it's done. It's not.
Absolutely not.
Because
Absolutely not.
I had, the farm I hunted in this particular night was a very well manicured place. And, you know, before this is actually first taste I got of seeing 40 to 50 deer in a food plot in the night. And, you know, I shot a doe that night, but that's the thing, like, before I even seen a deer, I had a deer behind me in the timber blowing. She blew like 20 times. And in 10 minutes, there was 20 deer in the food plot. It don't mean anything.
Exactly.
Just keep hunting.
Yep, and one of the main things that I've learned is, I mean, even if it's not even close to where you're hunting, that sound only goes so far. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times are you gonna stand on public and you hear a deer blow? But guess what? The deer you're hunting, the buck you're hunting, he may be bedded up a half a mile away.
Mhm.
That deer may not even have heard her blow or him blow, and I think 7 out of 10 times, you're silly to get up and abandon your hunt, because not
He
only,
knows she's there.
exactly, not only does she or he know that you're there, but how often do you see one run completely out of sight and just blow? No. They run off and they stop at a safe distance, and then they're gonna stop and look right to where it was, and they're gonna see you get out of that tree, and they're gonna see which way you walk out, and then you have blown your spot out, in my
Yeah.
opinion. At least for a week or two, you know?
That's
I
a
mean,
good way to look at it.
is that, yeah.
Alerting them even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times you're better off just, whether it's a morning hunt, I mean, obviously I would rather it be an evening hunt, you know, and get out of there when it's dark and be quiet, but more times than not, I think you're better off just sit there, because you don't know if that buck you're after, who's 700 yards away coming to you, has heard her or not. It's just,
Well, and even if he does, he can think in his head by the time he gets there, it's not gonna matter anyway.
Yeah.
That danger's already gone.
Absolutely. And if
And it's like
anything,
telling how long, you know, from when she blew at you and when he comes in, it's hard telling how long that space is
Yeah.
in there as well. So, yeah.
smart. So smart. Them things just, they get me speechless sometimes.
So,
Sorry, I just keep looking up there. I can't.
yeah,
I look right past him, just right up to the wall.
so back into sheds a little bit. This one right here is
Yeah, that's a good buck. And I'm plumb tickled he made it.
he's got a buck.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm saying.
Oh, gosh.
That's a stud. What's the story on these split G2s?
Oh, this guy right here.
Yeah.
So this is a buck that, man, I've been seeing him regular. I mean, I've been seeing him quite a bit. I thought I had him pinpointed. And, I mean, he just straight up disappeared on me. So I found the sheds, and I thought, man, what happened? And it was pressure from a neighbor. You know, I'd seen him, and he said, man, you see that buck with the split G2s and all that? And your first instinct is to say, no, but man,
Yeah,
tell me all about him.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that doesn't really hunt a lot, and he's the kind of guy that really just, if anybody ever deserved to kill what I would consider a solid, awesome buck, he's the guy. You know,
Yeah.
he's out there maybe 7 or 8 days, the whole length of deer season, and the reason he's not out there is usually due to work or family. So I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I seen him, I've been seeing him here and here. Well, on the same hand, you've also got to realize that just because you're dedicated to one buck and you hunt religiously this way, you play your scent and everything else, not everybody else is that way. Because to some people, big buck is nothing more than just a big buck. I don't have any history with him. And that person kind of explained to me the way he was hunting him coming in, and he just pushed him out of the area. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's to be continued.
Yeah,
So-
that would be.
Yeah, he
He's a
is.
stud.
Yeah, all of these rascals right here are all this year's, and they all made it, so it should be super good next year, or this year I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you got half of the season ahead, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
let's hope. Let's hope. If I do my job correctly, let's hope.
Yeah.
So, you did kill a stud last year.
Yes,
An
yes.
absolute Mondo.
Yeah. I was blessed with a very solid buck.
Kind of go into that a little bit.
So I actually got on this buck on public, Central Missouri is all I'll say. And I knew he was big. I'd gone on his rub line and found these scrapes and, seen these hooves and all that, and I thought, man, this is a big buck. And then I finally caught him one day, checking a scrape. And this is about 8 days exactly before rifle season. So I'm thinking, whoa, bud, you've got some vacation time, you better be using it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I did what I always do. I just overanalyzed everything. I thought, why am I seeing him here? Why is he coming from this way? What's this dude's story? So I was literally going in mid-morning when I knew he should have been out of there and in bed and would sit till dark. And I mean, this was every day. And in the mornings, I'm just like, man, I need to be in there. But I knew he was a morning deer, and I thought, if I go in there and blow him out of there this close to rifle season, I may push him over on somewhere else and he's going to get shot. So I finally had the wind I wanted. This was about 5 days before rifle season. So rifle season was Saturday, of course, and this was a Monday, I believe. I had the whole place to myself. I pulled up in the parking lot, not a soul there, and I thought, man, this is good stuff right here.
Yeah.
So
Love to see it.
exactly. So all morning long, had great activity. I'm covered up in turkeys. How they didn't pick me off, I don't know, because you know how they are, little bug-eyed. They're just spazzes, And
Which cannot wait till season.
exactly. And about 9:20, I heard something coming up the ridge, and I intentionally set in this spot because I knew he was going to be coming up from that way. So I intentionally set to where the sun was rising in his face, so I could get around and get position, and I did. And I already had my lane picked out. I thought, man, this is just picture perfect. Like, this
Yeah,
isn't
perfect.
supposed to happen. There's a almost 180-inch deer walking right to me. And right as I'm turning, I just started shooting a one pin. I was shooting two pins, so I kind of very softly adjusting. And I had it right there, and I was watching. And then, of course, again, the sun's to my back, so it's in their face. I see some glistening, and I kind of stretched up, and I mean an absolute, what I would consider an absolute freak, is about 6 steps behind him at this point. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's now a 190, I mean, possibly 200. I couldn't see all of the kickers and trash, but I knew that he was about 4 inches outside his ears and just a berserk, a freak. And so at that, on public land.
It's just crazy, man.
And so at that point, the buck I ended up taking 5 days later, I wasn't interested in him anymore. I wasn't worried about trash on the
Rightfully
bases.
so.
I mean,
Yeah.
bullwinkles come in the box, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? So the lead buck, he kind of veered off. And of course, that bigger buck pushed him that way.
Yeah.
So then that buck was coming right to me, straight to me. Could not have been a worse angle for me. And so we sit there, and he couldn't see me, but he knew that something just wasn't right. The wind had just kind of picked up and just kind of swirling, something like maybe some thermals had got down there to him or something. But he had turned and he was headed back the way he come, and I thought, man, if he can turn, I can stop him. I'll hammer him. And like I said, nobody ever likes to talk about when they miss, and I try not to. But I thought, man, that's a deer of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Here you are. The deer was 190s easy. I mean, he tanked the deer that I shot, and he ended up being 179 and some change. And he stopped. That deer read the script. He did everything right to be killed that morning. And when I let my arrow fly, I knew immediately, no, not going to happen. And I'd set it for my 50 yard, and he wasn't. he wasn't that at all. He was actually about 38, and I felt like an absolute just goofball. So of course you don't miss a deer like that and him just stand there, you know. So he bolted. The buck I ended up harvesting bolted, and I thought, what have you done? So like I always try to do, I didn't want to get frustrated. I thought, well, let's just sit here a while, you know. I mean, it's
Right.
prime time, you know. There's ladies all over town, you know. And about 45 minutes later, the smaller of the two, the one I ended up harvesting, he comes back. Same trail, I mean, same exact, like, on a limb line, just, he's right there. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you're done. You know? So at this point, I'd already set my pin. I dialed it in, 25 yards. When he hits that spot, man, shoot him and it's done. I wasn't playing this 40, 50 yard game, you know?
Right.
For whatever reason, he just kind of stopped and looked back over his shoulder like that, and that bigger buck was down in the bottom. There was a couple does that come off of a saddle, and he was running them around. Well, that's all she wrote, and I thought, well, this ain't good. So I hunted every single day and thought, man, I'll kill him. Never seen him until about 2 days before I finally killed him. And finally what I did was I narrowed it down, and it was a 2.3 acre patch that he had been living in. And I snuck in there one day. The only reason I snuck in there is because I watched him get blown out by some other hunters. That's public, you gotta love it, you know?
Yeah.
And there is not a doubt in my mind that they had seen that buck too. Whether,
For sure.
you know, and I thought, man, if they can get him, that's great. But if not, I'm gonna watch what he does. And I watched him run completely out of sight, and I just laid down. And I thought, what in the world am I gonna do? Like, I can't stand up. And there was a little walnut tree. Well, I say little, it's, you know, 20, 25 foot tall. It was maybe 30 yards away, and I thought, if I can get to that tree, I'll climb it, and I'll sit here for as long as it takes. And sure enough, about not even 30 minutes later, that deer circled all the way around and come in behind them boys and went right back to that same spot. And I thought, boy, that's weird. So I just left it alone and sat there and waited. Anyways, long story short, for another podcast, I ended up killing that deer. He was 179 and 5/8, but he was pretty smart, we'll just say that. Because in that 2.3 acres, he was laying in a ditch that had some blowdowns over it. This deer literally had, I wouldn't say burrowed because he's got too much junk whenever, but that deer had figured out he could lay in there and was completely hid. And it's just
crazy.
You know, and it goes back to how they can adapt. I mean, there's no telling how many guys he's probably seen walk right by him. That they couldn't tell he was in there because, I mean, the big old log jam and brush, but 2.3 acres and 180 inch deer. You know, it's just insanity. And it's like, well, that's how I get outsmarted all the time, because they do stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many of those you've walked by.
Exactly. But I mean, that deer was, he was a stud. I was extremely blessed to get him.
Great.
Good. Like I said, that's a good story. The whole story with that.
Yeah, we'll have to get you in again next rifle season or something when you get his mount back and hang him up there.
Yeah, be glad to.
So, Velveten.
The Velveten, man, that guy, he a lot of sleepless nights over that buck. I mean, just so good story to him.
Well, did you have history with him, or?
Yeah, actually, this is a 2-year quest on this deer. As a 3.5-year-old is when I first got on this buck, and as you've seen the pictures, as an 8-point, this deer would legitimately may have been one of the biggest 8-points I've ever seen in my life.
I think it's the biggest state I've ever seen.
I mean, he's well,
Pictures are impressive.
Yeah.
For sure.
just well above 160s. I mean, just everything you would need as an 8-point to score probably in the top 5 percentile in North America. That deer had it, as you could tell, you know.
Yeah.
And man, summer was going great. I was shooting my bow all the time. I was pumped up. I was
Training for a fight.
yes, I mean, even in June, early June, this deer was already framing up, split out, and I was like, whoa, like we've
Who
got
are
something.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So what year was this? This would have been
that would have been
19?
Yes, the summer of 19, and I'll never forget that. And man, he just kept showing up more and more regular. Of course, the other bucks in the thing. You know, he was running with
some
them.
other studs.
Yes, and he was the youngest of the group, and he kind of disappeared for a couple weeks, and then he showed back up. And I got in there and did some homework. You know, I went in there about 4 or 5 weeks before season and trimmed up the limbs I needed to do, and this is something that I choose to do. A lot of people probably don't because they probably think it's silly, but I'll go in there and I'll take scissors or little pruners and I'll walk 2 or 3 times. Like I said, I won't ever zigzag. I'm straight line in, straight line out. I
Right.
think that's the best way to control your scent.
Big thing is, getting in,
Yes, and so I
entrance.
put my bow on my strap, and I'd walk in with this and that, and I'd make different movements, and if anything I come in contact with, especially grass and like little buck brush, I think that's a dead giveaway sometimes, because you're so focused on being quiet that you don't even realize how noisy it is when your
Yeah.
boot goes across a piece of
Yeah.
buck brush. So I trimmed all that. I mean, I was ready to kill this dude.
Yeah.
So we fast forward to season, and I had him narrowed down. I mean, at 417, he was coming through every day, and I thought, man, this is just great. But I noticed he was still in velvet, and he wasn't even close to shedding. So here we are, about 2 weeks out, and I haven't ever kept a lot of arrows around, never have. But I'm extremely faithful to the one type of arrows I shoot: Easton Axis, 5mm, 300 spline.
Right.
So I let a buddy of mine borrow a couple because he was going out to Nebraska to do something, and then I had one more, and I thought, well, he'll be back after the first week of season. So, anyways, long story short, arrow fell out of the truck, broke it. So I go to Bow Freaks down there and tell Shannon, hey, I need some arrows, and he's like, man, I can order them. He's like, but they won't be here by opener. And I'm like, okay, I've got this giant that I've got narrowed down, and I don't have any arrows. So I ran down to Buffalo. I hadn't been up here but about a year probably, I just moved up here. So I went to I Am Outdoors there in Buffalo, and I bought some gold tip Primos edition 300 spline arrows.
Yeah.
And I
Shot
thought,
gold tip.
yeah, great arrow. And I thought, man, this is just great, and I put them in there and I shot 2 or 3 and no problem.
Yeah.
So come opening day, we're sitting there I got in the stand about 3:15 because I took off work about 2 hours early. It's hotter than the dickens. About 4 o'clock, I see some movement. And I could tell immediately, it was that big 8.
Yeah.
Not a lick of velvet shed or nothing. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to happen right now. Well, I'd been so focused on killing this deer that I never even bothered to look. So on my Easton 5mm, the nocks are different. On the gold tips, it had the little short nocks. So when
I
you
gotcha.
push in, it's different. My bow was broke into those. So it was, per se, more wore down on my string. So when I put those gold tips in there, they weren't actually pushing and pinching in.
It wasn't clicking.
Yes. So this deer a year earlier,
As an 8.
that's going to be in the 160s. I know people say, oh, with velvet, all that. Well, it don't take a genius to look at that picture. You could take 15 inches off that deer. He's still a toad.
Yeah.
14 yards, I go to draw, and this cat looks right up at me. And I'm almost at full draw, so I'll go ahead and just horse it back. That verdict doesn't exactly pull easy. And that deer looked at me, and it was the longest stare down. I know it couldn't have been more than probably 5 or 6 seconds. And as soon as I got back and, knocked, tink, arrow fell off the wrist, off the riser, bounced, and I swear it hit every limb plus 50 more on the way down. And that deer was gone. Never seen him when I was in the stand again. And then I was driving home one day. It was October 17th. I'll never forget it because it's my little sister's birthday. This joker crosses the road right in front of me. And I thought, oh, buddy, it's on. Like, we're not going to do this. You're not going to mock me. And by then, I had my normal arrows back and whatnot. And I never did get on that deer again. I never even seen him again till the following year. And he shows up with another buck that is just an absolute tank. I mean, he's a mainframe 10. He's got split G2s and brows. But I thought, man, I've got history with this cat, you know?
Yeah.
So
much more valuable.
exactly. So all throughout the summer, and I'm following on my cameras, and I'm getting tons of pictures. And about a week before season, I had a little over 4,400 pictures. And every week, I was checking my cameras every 9 days, slipping in, slipping out. He was just showing up more and more and more.
Right.
And finally, it dawned on me, it's like, this deer is a homeboy. This is his area. Because even when he was there, the other bucks weren't there. And I thought, well, he's not roaming. So, of course, every week I'd go back and check on the Weather Channel, and I'd look, and I finally narrowed him down to a southeast wind. And every single picture, I don't know how many there was, I'm going to say 1,500, 1,800 that I looked at, was a southeast wind, and it was from 4 o'clock to 6:15. That was it. No earlier, no later, no, not even any nighttime pictures of this buck at all. And that was pretty strange, because I
Yeah.
thought, here this deer is, he's 4.5, and he's not coming out at night, which again told me this is his core area. He doesn't have to come out at night to get away from danger. There's a creek that runs all the way around. I'm up on a ridge. It's just secluded by cedars. It's just built to hold a big buck.
And I'll stop you right there, because I always say, 3.5-year-old, no, it's a deer.
Mm-hmm.
4.5-year-old, totally different.
Completely different animal.
Because a 10 I was hunting as a 3.5-year-old, he was probably about a 120-10, and perfect deer with a buck. And yeah, he was showing up through the summer in the daytime, nighttime, everything. But as soon as he turned 4 years old and I started putting my truck in back out in July-ish, that buck, he grew a lot more, but I hardly had one day picture of that deer.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very rare. I had a couple day pictures in like late August. But other than that, that's what I'm saying. The transition to 3 to 4.
Oh, it's just insane.
Yeah.
They're just the memory span that increases is just out of this world. And then it's like once they get to, I haven't seen very many 5.5-year-olds that you'll catch out in daylight at all. Just even on private where they're not real pressured. And I think that just comes from their straight up just their survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they know like nighttime is my safe time.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a 2 to 3 week window there. You're going to catch them out in the daytime during the rut, but I don't ever really count that. If I see a deer out in the daylight during that time, I don't ever really count that as like, oh man, I've done something here. No, all I've done is put myself in the right area. But you and I both know, you go where the does are at.
Oh yeah.
Core area doesn't mean nothing. You go where the does are at, and pray to goodness that he stays with one where you're at and doesn't fall over 7 miles away and gets
Right.
shot by the neighbor, or something like that. But so, yeah, when they hit that 4.5 stage, they get really smart. And I think when they get 5.5, 6.5, I think that's when the chess match really begins.
Yeah.
And you've got to sit down and pick and choose your days. Like, man, it's plenty cold this morning, but the wind's not perfect.
Yeah.
And if it's not perfect, don't go.
Yeah.
Because there's a good chance you get busted. And a lot of them deer won't give you second chances.
Right.
So
Go ahead and continue on.
so now we're into season, and I'm pumped for this guy. I mean, I've got him. I would have bet anything on it. I was that confident in what I had done to put me in the situation to be able to kill the deer.
Right.
Nobody can ever say that, man, I guarantee it, I'm going to kill that deer. I promise you I'm going to kill that deer. No. All you can do is do every bit of homework you can to put yourself in that moment. Because when that moment comes and you've got a big mature buck, everything changes.
Uh-huh.
Emotions are there that you never thought about. Shakes are there that you never thought about. Things are going through your mind. Oh my gosh, if I have to shoot a 30, man, did I trim that out there? Did I shoot to see if there's an arc? I mean, there's so many things that you only think of for a split second. And there's a lot of things that you don't think of.
See, I kind of compare that to, meeting new women. You talk to them forever and ever. You got pictures of them,
Oh, yeah.
all sorts of stuff. And as soon as you go to meet them, some people choke up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with deer. You
Yeah.
got trail cam pics of them.
Yeah.
You take that one little stutter and it's over.
Yes, yes,
exactly.
absolutely,
You ruined your whole
absolutely. And man, I was pumped up to be in that moment. So I'd hunted the opening 2 days. The wind was right. It was super hot, of course. You know how it is, and fighting the ticks and the mosquitoes. But when it's right, you've got to go. I mean, because if you don't kill them, in my experience, this is strictly my opinion, if you don't kill that deer in that first 2 weeks of early season, there goes your chances that you probably were hunting him off of food, bed, food, etc. Luckily I had a creek where this deer was staying, so I knew he was going to be a little bit more active because the water was right there,
Yep.
and there was fields and stuff. But so first 2 days hunted, seen a lot of deer activity, didn't see hardly any good bucks. So I set out the next few days, had some stuff going on at home. I think we had some cow stuff to do or something. Anyways, long story short.
Cow stuff.
So, exactly. So September 21st rolls around, and I've got the wind I need. I mean, I'd done checked it. I'd done told my boss, hey, I need off at 2 o'clock today. He said, man, do whatever you do. Just get that deer killed, because I'm tired of hearing about it. I mean, this deer literally,
As good as you should.
He knows a
literally,
little bit about that.
yes, I mean, it literally consumed me. That's all I could think about, because I knew that I'd done everything that I could and should to put myself in a situation to harvest this deer. And I also knew that he should still be in velvet, because the year before, I mean, it was pretty rough, and this guy was in velvet.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what?
That's just weird.
It is, you know, and here we are September 21st, and like I told you earlier before we started, every bit of that velvet that you see as off was not rubbed off. I did that boogering him up, getting him out of the cedars and whatnot. I had to drag him across the creek and load him up on the four-wheeler. So he was still 100% velvet, no rubbing, no nothing. And so about 4:15, I heard something. Of course, it's blue jays, you know. More times than not, they're little rats. You know, they're telling you, hey, something's coming, you know. And man, it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I knew this deer should have been bedded there. I knew that when I walked in. I had the right wind. I thought, if you slip in there right, you should kill that deer this evening. You really should, Joshua. There's no reason he shouldn't be there. So that started about 4:15. About 4:40, the movement's moving up the creek, which is the way he should have been coming. And then I finally seen him when he topped the hill. Like I could see him, those threes, you know, they always stuck up a little higher. And I thought, oh wow, like it just got real. And I went from being completely confident, thinking, man, I'm about to TKO this cat, to thinking, did I do this right? Did I do this right? Where's my side at? Is this good? Is the knock in good this year? Because I don't want to have a repeat of, hey bud, what are you doing up there?
Yeah.
So he's out there about 60 yards, and he stops. I mean, just stone cold, and looks right up. I'm sitting in a cedar. I always try and get either in a hardwood right next to a cedar, or if I can get in the cedar itself, it's big enough to I like getting in them, because not only does it hide your silhouette, but scent. It helps control your scent, because it don't matter how good you play your scent. When it's 90 degrees, you can walk in naked. It don't matter. You're not scent free. So I always try and get myself close to a cedar. So this joker is just looking right at me like, are you there? Like, do I really need to bust you again? And for whatever reason, he keeps coming, and he gets about 40, and same thing again. The steer just stops, and he looks, and now he's starting to do that number, and I thought, what's he seeing, man? I've literally set my game camera before down and climbed my tree and sat up there just to see, like, okay, there's no way that this deer can silhouette me. So then it dawns on me, hey, dum-dum, he's probably looking at something behind you, which is what he was doing. That other buck that had been running with him, the G2 split, the brows, was coming up behind me, and I thought, oh, buddy, you're in a pickle.
Yeah.
Because now, this deer is kind of checking that tree. I don't think that deer even knew I was there. I honestly don't think this cat knew I was there at all. But I think from memory, from the year before, I think any time that deer was in the area, he checked that tree. I honestly think he was just like,
100%.
like, we're going to do this again? Like, you want to try and kill me?
Yeah.
You probably looked at that tree every time you walked by it.
I promise you he did, you know? And so then I've got this other buck, and now this other buck is so close that I'm not even moving. I'm still looking at this buck. And out of my peripheral, I can see rack. And I thought, oh, bud, you are so screwed. I hadn't even stood up yet. I was still sitting down. And I thought, well, you're going to have to shoot sitting
I
down.
know the feeling.
And so this guy is actually walking out in front of me, broadside now. Broadside at 27 yards. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm screwed. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but the buck that was directly underneath me come back to the left and made this buck turn. And when he got quartered away, just a simple meh. And I mean, I put the pin, and I can remember it. This
I was going to say, kind of walk us through
this
this
is
shot.
literally one of the only times that I've ever had it in my mind where I had to literally tell myself, do not look at the rack, do not look at the rack, do not look at the rack. Watch your pin, don't let it float through and pull the trigger. When it hits, settle, exhale, pull your trigger. And I had to tell myself that, like, a lot. Probably not a lot, but it felt like it in my head.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm shaking like the dickens. I mean, I'm sitting down, and I just couldn't get anchored good. Well, luckily, there was another cedar that was right beside me. And so whenever I got back, you know, and I was shaking, I took my elbow and put it over on that and it stabilized me. And he was so keyed in on that other buck, like, hey, what are you doing here? And man, when I squeezed that trigger, it was like, God, I mean, just like everything on earth just stopped. And I could literally, the moment that G5 Havoc hit him, it was like a Mike Tyson right hook to the jaw, but at the same time, it was like a knife going through hot butter. It was just the perfect just slice, and he mule kicked and he let out. I've always wanted it to happen. It couldn't happen on a better hunt. He let out the biggest growl I've ever heard in my life. Mule kicked, took about 45 steps. He didn't even run. He mule kicked, stopped, walk, step, 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 and just fell over dead right there. So I called my buddy Brandon Harder, who I had been talking about this deer for 2 years, and I'm sure at this point he's like, man, I hope he killed that deer because I'm sick and tired of this. And I called him, and to this day, I'd almost bet you anything he would say, man, I've never heard somebody hyperventilate more than I did. I was so ecstatic, I had forgot, I guess, that I was in a tree or whatever, and I said, man, I just tanked the Velveten, and of course, you know, your buddy said, did you see him fall? Did you hear him? I said, man, I'm looking right at this cat. And I went to stand up, and I kid you not, my legs come out from underneath me, and I thought, whoa, buddy. But I literally sat there for about 15 minutes just looking at him, you know, and it goes back to that. There is a lot of luck. There is, because for whatever reason, that deer chose that spot. He chose to come through to that wind. But as hunters, you also have to pat yourself on the back and be like, you know what? I figured that out. I ran my cameras.
Yeah.
I played my scent. I trimmed those limbs. I did this. I did that. I hunted when I needed to instead of when I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you can't kill them on the couch. You can't.
That is for sure.
You cannot kill them if your butt's not in a tree, blind, whatever, how you're hunting. But I also know that you can't hunt them blindly, because they will bust you every single time. And most mature bucks don't give you a second chance.
Nope.
They really don't.
Not at all.
At all. So this deer absolutely just, I mean, he read the script for that day. It was everything that it was supposed to be. I mean, he's just an awesome buck. I've shot bigger, but I've shot smaller too. You know? And September 21, and he's still in full velvet. I mean,
I was going to
I'd
say,
have probably
so
shot a basket rack if he was in full velvet, because
Yeah.
I've always wanted to. You know, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. Like, unless you're going to Montana or Nebraska or Milk River Bottoms, or there's just not.
Kentucky.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
they do kill some velvet bucks every year.
Yeah, you just don't see it around here.
Exactly, but to kill a decent one, it's pretty awesome.
Decent, my ass.
Well, he's pretty salty. He's pretty salty, you know. But
Well, yeah.
he's good. He's
What he scored?
we taped him whenever I first killed him, and he was high 150s, I think, right at 160. So I'm sure he's dried up some. And in all honesty, I didn't put tape on him again, because I thought, you know what?
Call it as it is.
Call it as is, because I'm afraid if I put tape on him, he may not be as good as I thought he was. And now that I've got a legit tank coming that's going to go next to him, I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I look down on that deer, because I think no matter how many deer you've killed, whether you're the pros and you're killing 200s, if you look at a deer like that and you're not impressed or you don't get happy about it, you don't need to be hunting.
No.
Yeah,
Period.
There's something wrong.
There's
You
deer.
never forget where you came from.
You have to keep yourself in check. You have to humble yourself, you know. So from where I originally came from down there is 130-inch deer, in all seriousness, in Berry County, Missouri, is a pretty dang big deal. I mean, they kill some 140s, 150s, but it's always in rifle season, you know. Oh man, this deer come blowing by me. Well, he probably got jumped while the Orange Army was in town, you know.
Yeah.
We've all done it. We've all seen it. But so I always use that as like, man, that just makes that deer that much better, because it's growing up. I don't know if I ever seen a deer that I would consider mature or something worth bragging down there. I killed several deer down there. I've got several 130s and 140s, and those are big deer all day long.
Yeah.
But I always am like, this is a big deer, Joshua. You should be proud of that.
It's a velvet bug.
Never ever look down on that buck, because you think of all the hard work, and it just goes back to, that's just bow hunting. I mean, it's,
So we was talking a little bit about like him being in velvet so late the year prior. So do you think he was holding that velvet the whole time, or
you know, it's
it's
kinda like-
hard telling, but
it's super hard telling,
it makes you wonder.
but at the same time, over 2 year span, I probably had pushing 7,000 pictures of this buck. I know it for a fact. I mean, even as a 3-year-old, he still had that little deer tick looking thing right there below his brow. So it makes me wonder, where did he go winter at? Obviously, he was killed in his core area, but to hold velvet all the way till October 17th one year and then kill him on September 21st the next hunting season, and he's still in velvet. I mean, he hadn't shed a lick. That everything you see up there is what I boogered getting him out of there. You know, it's thick and so. You know, and the first
Something
thing
with
in
this-
my mind was, oh, he's probably got cut on his sack or something from
Yeah.
jumping the fence. Deer was
Testosterone.
completely healthy. I had the bottom jaw sent off. You know, I come back, yeah, he's a 4.5-year-old man. It's just average wear on him. I don't know, just one of those weird.
That's weird.
Just a
no
weird chip.
reason behind
Yep.
it at all.
Yep, none. They couldn't. I mean, meat looked fine. Even when we caked him out, you know, I looked hardcore. There was nothing out of the ordinary. But then again, on the same hand, I've never ever seen a deer around the property that has held his velvet like that. So I don't think it would be something genetic. Maybe it's just a freak deal, or
It
maybe it never got to the point where it irritated him enough to run. I don't know, but here's what always mind blown me was I seen that deer, this deer, the year before October 17th. He was completely full of velvet. Nothing was shed. Why was that deer not fighting? Or at least sparring or rubbing a
Yeah,
tree,
something.
Yeah, that's
working a lick.
something.
That's right.
That is always to this day mind blowing me. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He said, that's so true. He said, he should have at least made a rub, been working a scrape, you know, getting a lick branch, but not a lick was off. So I always thought, man, I'd like to find those sheds. So I don't know if it's just super strange, but I know I'm plenty tickled with him.
That's another thing.
Rightly so.
I wonder if
He's a good one.
Thank you. I wonder if squirrels will chew on 'em if they got velvet on them.
See, and that was the first thing I thought
Because you
of
may very
was-
well find them someday, and
Yeah.
that would be cool as hell.
Oh, it would just be awesome, yeah. But I thought, well, if they're in velvet, maybe it makes that scent that much stronger, you know, and so they just absolutely devour
Too.
them. But yeah, I was sure tickled to finally sink an arrow in him and get it done. So
kind of, I mean, obviously you kind of already explained it. Give me more though, like walking up to this deer.
oh gosh, yeah, man, I can take you through that. So at this point, I finally got off the phone with my friend who has had to literally probably talk me down. Like, man, like calm down. Like we don't want to.
I know
not-
that feeling, and I just
Yeah.
shot a doe.
Come back to earth.
Yeah, like, we want to get down to the base of the tree. We want- You know, I mean, I was legit, I was so happy because it all came together, but at the same time, from hunting for so many years and trying to manage hunt a little bit, you know, but still taking smaller deer that you needed taken out or something, the sense of accomplishment was out of this world. So I'm still shaking, and I get about, I mean, you didn't go very far, but I probably get about half the distance, and I mean, you just stop, and you're just like, I mean, you just look at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at those threes. Look at his manes. Look at how they curl in and come up, and he's got awesome brows, and he's just, I mean, I'm seriously just nitpicking this little rascal to death, and you know, I'm just like, oh my gosh, and
So I gotta ask, because I've never done it. How'd it feel putting your hands on velvet?
interesting you asked that, because when I got up there, I didn't first grab him at first, because first thing in my mind was pictures,
Fall off.
pictures. Like there was probably
Yeah, that too.
there was probably 10 people that knew about this deer that were, no, they didn't hunt close to me, but I mean they were in the same county, so they knew that, like, oh my gosh, this guy's acting like a crackhead right now. But the moment I went up and actually grabbed it, it was so much squishier than I thought it would be. I mean, it was to the point where if I squeezed it, it would have been like a banana that had been set out for 2 weeks in the sun.
I've always wondered.
Literally, when I would squeeze him just barely, you could see the blood kind of almost come to the surface, but not come to the surface, which was another thing that kind of mind blowing, because I was extremely careful getting him out of there. And I barely brushed up against anything. I mean, I'd literally bear hugged his front legs and kind of carried him out like that. And every time I barely touched something, that velvet was coming off. So it just goes to show.
It's impressive how he held it.
Exactly.
The year before.
And so then I went back to my cameras, and just like clockwork, 4:15 to, well, let's just say 4 to 6:30. That's when he was in there every single day. So the rest of the time was he just get up, kneel around, go get a drink of water, and bed. So I've always wondered if maybe he was hurt. You know, maybe something was painful about that touching him. You know, kind of like on a. I don't know how to really explain it, but it was super, super weird that he hadn't bumped any of that off.
It's a pretty wild story.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
Especially a rack that size, you think you bump him and just walk
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely, because from best I could tell, he definitely wasn't using the trail that I had limbed up, trimmed up. I mean, it was, for me, shoulder width. You weren't bumping nothing going in, you know, and he's obviously a little bit wider than that, but. It's just strange, but man, I was pumped walking up to him. Going back to that, you just kneel down and you just, of course, you thank God, and then you got to pat yourself on the back a little bit because of all the work that's took to get there. You know, it's a 2-year quest, and the thing that probably hit home for me the most was I never ever thought I'd see that deer ever again after the first year. When you're at full draw and you finally get over that hump and you come back in that split second, just from you. Tink, tink, tink. And he's already doing this number. It's the most helpless feeling in the world.
Yep.
Because it makes me wonder, had I had that arrow that I've hunted with for years, ever since they first come out, it's what my string was, wore down to.
You'd have killed him as a...
I'd have killed possibly one of the
68.
biggest 8s you've ever seen in your life. And the pictures back that up. I mean, the deer was stupid big, And again, that goes back to, was this deer hurt? Because I would go out on a limb and say, as an 8-point, the year before, he would have scored probably 20 inches more than he did right there.
Yeah.
I honestly think that deer was a mid-160s 8-point with no velvet. I mean, his 2s and 3s were 13, 14 inches, but bases were, 6.5, pushing 7. I mean, was probably 22, 23 inches wide. Mains were probably 26, 27. I mean,
Good grief.
I mean, that's just hands down one of the biggest 8-points I've ever seen in my life. And why at that moment that arrow came off, I'll never know, but boy, it made it so much more to be thankful for. Because I was just like, wow, this story's done, let's wrap it up. And shaking, just shaking.
Yeah.
It's just...
So for the people not watching the video podcast, kind of explain to everybody kind of what he looks like.
Walking up to him?
No, just, what he looks like in general.
Just a big old mainframe Tim. No, on paper, and as you guys can tell, he's less than an inch difference side to side. He's almost perfect. I mean, he's as a perfect 10
I can see that.
as you could ever ask. And I do believe it's his right side, the G4, is like 3/4 of an inch shorter, and one of his brows is not quite an 1/8 of an inch difference. But other than that, that deer on paper is as symmetrical as you could ever. Yes, I mean, he's a perfect 10, literally perfect. Main beams were within a 1/16 of an inch, and just he's got that nice summer coat on, and that velvet just, and of course where I kind of boogered him up. But in my opinion, a fully intact velvet, nothing rubbed off, would have been gorgeous. But boy, that red blood that's been freeze dried on, it really, it gives it some like attitude, like a legit.
Brings it back to life. Man.
Yes, absolutely. He's a stud.
Going back to the summer coat, like I shot that 7 this year, the big 7. And that's the earliest I've ever shot a deer.
Which was a heck of a deer too, man.
Like I think it was like the 23rd or something.
That was early. Yeah, I remember.
So that's the first thing I noticed is how pretty his summer coat was.
Yeah, and the fact that he's a stud of a 7-point.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the only thing that could have made that deer better is maybe if he was a 6-point. I mean, he was so heavy, and I can remember how he kind of went up and had that like crab just,
Big old crab.
yes,
claw on
just
the
like
side.
just a stud. I mean, just, you know, I've always wanted to, and I know guys that have killed legit world-class deer, they always say, I want to kill a big six. And I'm the same way.
Oh, yeah.
I have been hot and heavy for a big six forever, and I've only seen 2 in my life. One that I could have hunted that was legit, I mean, big, like your 7. But where does it go? You know? I mean, but yes, I can remember when you posted that. How old was that deer, by the way?
He was 3.5.
It makes you wonder, what would he have been at 5.5?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to worry about that. 'Cause
No.
we know what he was at 3.5.
Yes.
Yes.
That's my biggest buck with a bow so far.
Oh, and a stud. He was a stud.
And it's like we brought up in a previous podcast, like that one guy, one individual that buck shamed me. You know, it's like, for real though, knock that G3 on the right side off. Look how big of a 6 that is. You know, it's a big 6. You
Oh,
don't really, I mean,
Yeah.
you do, but it's not very common
Not
to
like
see
that.
6s that
And
big.
and deep. He was so deep in his forks too, you know, and I thought, oh man, I'd love to kill a deer like that. Gun or bow. I mean,
Love to kill a deer like that.
yeah, I would love to kill another one like it. I really
Yeah.
would. Yeah, you can't take nothing away from him. You just, you really can't. You know, it's kind of like that, what is it, the Dustin, is it Huffman or Hoffman? The new number 2 world typical now. Came out of Ohio, killed it with a
I
crossbow.
think it's Hoffman.
You know, guy, there was on forums and stuff, guys were like, man, just think if he would have broke off that kicker off the brow, I think, or the G2, he would have been the new typical world record. But I'm like, yeah, but then you would have had the controversy of, well, he shouldn't have been, you know, because this is broke off, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm just like, guys, don't take away from that.
No.
That is
They're
a,
just jealous.
that
The
is
old guys
literally,
from
that's what it
forums.
is. Yes,
Jealousy
it's straight
at
up
the end of
jealousy, you know, and I don't hunt with a crossbow. I don't care to hunt with a crossbow, but guess what? When the day comes, when I need a reason to hunt with a crossbow, I will. But I can also tell you that if I want to hunt with a crossbow, I'm going to hunt with a crossbow. And
Yeah.
people should not shame others for hunting with a crossbow.
Right.
Nobody knows why that guy's hunting with a
Yeah.
crossbow, but guess what? Even if he had a compound bow, he still did everything he needed to put himself in that situation and make the shot. At the end of the day, the deer can show up, you can be there, blah, 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 but at the end of the day, you as a hunter, you have to make a shot. And in my opinion, with a bow, crossbow, that's hard. When
Yeah.
you've got a 200+ inch deer, I don't care if you got a 100-inch deer, it's
Yeah.
hard to make the shot for me, but
But you get them 200s. And
yeah, you know, and that's something that nowadays is just, first of all, I mean, a 200 typical is just out of this world, but for people to get on there and just cast negative energy towards that guy just blew my mind. I thought,
I got away from forums a long time ago
yeah,
because of that
it's
reason.
just a lot of guys that they're never gonna, they might kill a big buck once every 5 or 6 years, but when guys do that, I've noticed that if they kill a big buck every 4 or 5 years and they just brag city about it, that guy probably shot a buck that somebody that was hunting hard jumped and he ran by and he shot him with a rifle.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with rifle hunting, but it's just a different feel whenever you've done all the homework and you can pop a string on one, or you kill him with a rifle. I mean, I killed a giant this year.
Kill them with whatever you want to kill them
Exactly,
with.
but don't shame. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
It's not good.
yeah, you
No,
don't know
he's
how
a-
much time and effort that guy put in
Exactly
to
right.
get on that.
That's what I'm
exactly
saying
right.
with
No
this
matter
buck
what size
here.
it is.
Yeah, with this buck here, you know, you beat him at his game not once, but
Twice.
twice.
Absolutely, yes. Had him in my kitchen twice. Yeah.
You know,
And-
so it's just unfathomable.
Yeah.
It's
And those are things you've got to take away from it. You've got to be like, man, I did that. Like, I
you
did
may not ever have
I did it right twice.
Absolutely.
something like that happen
Yep,
again.
absolutely right. Yep.
You know.
I may never kill a deer over 80 inches again in my life, you know, and a lot of guys, like all the time, I have people say, man, you're always killing big bucks. You're always finding sheds. And I'm like, well, you got to get out there.
Put the time in.
That's exactly right. I know tons of people that have probably killed way more deer than I'll ever kill. Big, mature bucks. But one thing I do know, they put in the time.
Yeah.
They hunt smart. You're not going to, the only time, in my opinion, you're ever going to get lucky and fool a big mature buck, or any buck for that matter,
Yeah.
is if he's young or it's the rut. Because we all know during the rut, there is no rules for them guys.
No.
They get plumb dumb. When the girls
Yeah.
are in town, they get dumb. They walk right out in front.
Anything
With the
can
wrong
happen.
head.
Exactly.
The whole
Exactly.
time.
The little rascals.
Well, it's like the must be nice guys, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be nice to shoot a big deer like that. Must be nice to have all that land. Must be nice to do this, do that.
Well,
You work for it,
go out there and try.
you know?
It's just a small part of the equation. It don't matter if you got 2.3 acres where you kill a big one like I did this year, or you've got 2,000 acres. You still, that guy has put himself in that position to kill
Yes.
that buck more times than not.
Oh,
And especially if it's with a bow. You don't see very many bucks that come easy with a bow. Hey, because you're in the time of year, if it's before rifle season, that you've got to do your homework, because he's not just going to walk by your tree. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, there's a million trees in the woods. Why is he going to walk right by yours? Oh, because you ran your cameras, or you did your homework, or you read your topos right. You know, I mean, so many things go into killing big mature whitetails out there.
Yeah. It's just crazy the amount of stuff that goes into it.
Yes, it is.
And can boil down to one hunt.
Yep, and that's why it's so heartbreaking whenever you are full draw on a giant and tink, 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 you know, and you're like, why did that have to happen? Literally, why did that have to happen right now? Like,
Well, not only that, but like, especially after you kill the deer, you know, and then you think back automatically, that's what I did on the 7, like, okay, when you pop back to full draw, that feeling you got, and all that, you'll never experience that on
Never.
more deer again.
no,
You may experience it on more deer,
but
that's like the 7. It meant a lot to me. That was a very
Mhm.
special deer for me to shoot,
yep,
and I may never experience something like that again.
yep, no 2 bucks or does even. I mean,
Yeah.
there's does that there's, in my opinion, nothing harder to hunt besides a big mature whitetail than an old mature doe. I mean, you see it all the time on Facebook, you see it on social media. When that one doe is finally blowed her light, I mean, she's not blowing just to be annoying. She's blowing because she beats you. Like every time
She knows
she
something.
busts you, you've done something wrong.
100%.
Whether that's hunting in her wind, hunting the same stand too much, it doesn't matter. She's busted you.
Yep.
That's like that one I missed there that last weekend. She sat there and blew and stomped for like half an hour.
Like,
Just looking at me like, you just go
Gotcha.
away
Just
sometime. Maybe something else
just
would come.
leave, you know?
Yeah.
And it just makes you wonder, like, how many guys, how many women, how many teens has this doe seen in a tree stand with a bow, with a rifle, or walking on the ground, and has gotten away with blowing for that long? She got to be smart, you know, but sometimes you just got to let them have the axe. But to kill a big mature doe is, in my opinion, a trophy too.
Oh,
Because-
100%.
because they all have the same brain capacity. It's just those mature bucks, they they fine tune it a little bit more, whereas does just kind of, you know, they just do their thing really. You know.
I killed a big doe a couple years ago, and cut the jawbone out of her, and just, I mean, smooth. And I ended up sending it in, and it was a 6.5-year-old doe.
Insane.
And it's like,
Makes you wonder how many times she's done that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you know, like going back to that 8.5-year-old buck that I killed, same property where my big one came from this year on public. That deer didn't have maybe a penny's thickness of tooth in his head. But I mean, that deer might have scored, and this is no exaggeration, he might have scored 80 inches. And guess what? He shoulder mounted at home on my wall. And he has the biggest body of any buck on that wall. He has got what I would call that warrior look to him. I mean, he'd been fighting. The day I shot that buck, he was bleeding everywhere from fighting, gouging. He literally came to a rattle followed by a snort wheeze, and when he came in, he was sidestepping, ready to throw down again. I thought, my gosh, how can you not put that dude on the wall? And
Yeah.
you could pick that deer apart. I think there's 13 or 14 out in the shop. You could walk in there, never been there, and be like, that's him. He's just got that junkyard bulldog look to him. His tines ain't but 6 or 7 inches, and they're as round as this microphone is. Just rounded off and just scarred up. He's got cuts. I can't,
that's how
oh, brought him
that's how
down.
the low ranger's gonna be.
exactly, you know.
Yeah.
We had a button buck this year out on public that you can tell him just by looking at his body what deer this is.
He just constantly postured up and just,
he's
a-
looking.
He's
brawler.
he's odd looking.
Yeah.
yeah.
And he was always, we have like 5 pictures where he's not by himself.
And he'll be the one that'll come in and just ruin your set because he wants to fight everything in the world. You know? And it's like,
Probably, honestly.
it's like, you're going to stop that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, them old whitetails they're truly special ones to take, doe or buck, either one.
For sure. Well, Josh, thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
We enjoyed it, we appreciate it.
It's nice to have something to look at as well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure. But, yeah, like I said, closer to rifle season, when you
Yep.
get your shoulder mount of that tank you killed last year back, we'll get you back down here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll bring in some dead heads I found in some more sheds and go over that, and we'll just make a good time of it, gents.
We'll get on video. But once again, tell everybody kind of where everyone can find your stuff. If you're on, as far as social media.
I pretty much just have Facebook. I had an Instagram for a while, but I'm too dumb to keep up with two things at once. So, but I've got tons of pictures on my Facebook, and I always try to keep them on there because I always like seeing people putting any type of bone, and like turkey season's coming up, so we'll have to get out there and make them flop. But
Yeah,
as far as social media, just Facebook's all I've got.
for sure. So. All right. Anyways, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Ultimate Whitetail Bow Hunter Podcast. Like they always say, dream big, hunt hard. We love you.
Peace out.